We've got Rob Cassidy, the National Recruiting Director for Rivals and for basketball recruiting. Rob, how are you, sir?
I'm good. You know, one of these days I'm going to get there for the Indy 500. It's on my bucket list. This might not be the year because A, I don't have the time, and B, I don't want to stand in the rain, but maybe next year.
I'm telling you, there are so many events that go on beforehand that are actually almost as fun, especially the Saturday and the Sunday before, because Saturday is qualifying, and they have what they call the Fast 12, who are the 12 fastest. Those guys move, and then the next day you have the Fast 6, and those top 6 get to go for the pole position. And then there's people trying to make the race still. So Indianapolis has done the best job of making ancillary events into pretty big events and fun things to watch. You don't have to deal with hardly any traffic because it's so spread out on those days that that's a great time to go. I'll be honest with you.
Is it affordable for regular people still, or is it gone the way of F1 where it's like, forget about it?
No, man, they pack this place. I mean, absolutely pack it. And there are just, yes, is my answer. It's affordable.
Awesome.
I don't know what the ticket prices are exactly, but I know that there are, with the amount of seats they have, which I think it's the largest stadium in the world, which you would call the largest stadium in the world, because for the race last year when I was there, it was 330,000 people, Rob.
Oof. Boy. Yeah, I gotta get to see this in person. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah, it becomes one of the biggest cities. Speedway, Indiana, which is where the track is actually located, which is kind of a city inside of Indianapolis, the northwest corner. But it's a city of about 12,000 maybe. But on race day, it's about 350,000.
That's incredible.
Yeah, it becomes big. But speaking of big, has been basketball, the AAU circuit this summer. We've seen quite a few guys, their recruiting blow up. Braylon Mullins, I'll just start with Braylon Mullins. I've been talking about him for weeks and how, man, you could just tell he was getting on a heater, and that his recruiting was going to pick up. Indiana, of course, has been on him from the beginning, but now you've got the rest of the big boys jumping in, whether it's UConn talking or North Carolina. Just in the last 2 days, I've seen offers from Ohio State and Creighton for him. So he's had a hell of a summer. Kansas, he's had a hell of a summer on the circuit, man. None bigger than last week in Texas, where he goes 6 of 6 behind the 3-point line and 8 of 10 overall from the field.
Yeah, I saw him about a month ago for the first time this year and was like, oh, he had a great game. And I was like, oh, when college coaches see this guy. And sure enough, they went and they saw him last weekend, and the offers poured in. And now, Indiana's got another heavyweight fight on its hands. I'd argue that this is a incredibly important recruit for Mike Woodson in the state, in an area of the state where Indiana traditionally had success. And now he's got to win one of these fights. He's going to have to knock out, North Carolina and Kansas. And I think if you have a chance to do it, this is it, though. You got a kid in your backyard. You got in early. You've recruited this kid a year before anybody else even knew who he was. There's a lot working for Indiana here. And if things straighten out on the floor this season, I think they'll have as good a chance as anybody can land it.
Yeah, and he's one of those old school, what I call old school Indiana kids, man. The dude, he's just got a jumper that is smooth as butter. He can get to the rim, though, and he likes to get to the rim. I guess defense is probably the thing he'll have to work on most. And not that he's bad. It's just that's something you always have to work on. But, man, from an offensive standpoint, he's got a great bag of tools.
Yeah, he's a lot more athletic than I think people give him credit for, because everybody likes to talk about the three-point shot and like you mentioned, the jumper, which is incredible. But he can, he's got some wiggle to him. He gets by guys. He gets paint touches. He gets in there. He finishes at the basket over bigger defenders. He does a lot on the offensive end. And I think the defense will come as he adds some weight, just the natural progression of things. Now he gets pushed around a little bit. But, he's young.
Yeah, and the Indiana Elite team that he plays on is also has a few guys that many people have heard of. Of course, Trent Sisley right there next, another Indiana kid from down in southern Indiana at Heritage Hills High School. Trent, his summer has gone extraordinarily well. It seems like it's gotten better as Indiana Elite has their 3SSB season has progressed.
Yeah, that whole team in general, is Malachi Moreno on that team too? I think he is, right?
Yep.
He's been impressive, and he's one that I think Indiana's got a good shot at too. Between that big three, Mike Woodson is going to see himself courtside a lot, I think, in July to watch that Indiana Elite team, because those are all three gettable, high-profile targets, I think, and they're the kind of targets that if he wants to kind of quiet down some of the groans from that fan base, that he needs to get, at least one of them, I think.
Absolutely, and when I talked to them at an event a while back, a few weeks back, they all talked about they're trying to take an official visit to Indiana together.
Yeah, if you imagine if we got all three of them, and that works in their favor, I think, because you can really, if you can get one of them sold on the State Pride Act, narrative, and building the program back up around local-ish kids. I know Moreno is technically from Kentucky, but if you can start that narrative, and we were in on you early, yada yada. Of course, the money has to be there. If it is, I think you give yourself a chance. The season has to start well too, because if this season goes poorly, as well as I do, the groans are going to get louder, the seat is going to get warmer, and then it's harder to land high-profile recruits with options. So I think they've got to come strong out of the gate. And if they do that, I think that they can get one or two of those guys, and then you're talking about a good cycle, I think.
Yeah, and like I mentioned, Trent Sisley, he's so universal. He can play a multitude of different positions, whether it's kind of the three mainly or the four. He can go inside. He's played a lot inside this summer, but also step out and calmly knock down the long ball. So he is also a very valuable weapon. We talked about all three of these guys, all three different players perfectly placed in those positions. And then they've got a kid named Mark Zachary that plays point guard for them, who is most people think is going to be an NFL cornerback. But man, I'm surprised that he's not picking up offers for college basketball along the way, or I would not be surprised to see him play both sports at some school.
Yeah, there are very few schools that seem open to letting that happen. Football and basketball, I don't know what Indiana's football program is like. I know Florida State is traditionally under Leonard Hamilton, let guys do that, but it's difficult. And also, to your thing, like when you mentioned you don't know why he's not picking up a ton of basketball offers. Some of these basketball coaches, you get a reputation for being a football recruit, shy away because they don't want to waste resources and they don't want to chase you and then have you go play football at Georgia or wherever you go. So that is something that happens. I've seen it happen for years. Kids that could play Division I basketball will get under-recruited because they get a reputation for being a football guy, and then that's that.
Another big name that haven't talked about yet that's straight from the state of Indiana is Jalen Harrelson. Also one that his recruitment has gone national, and that was prior already. He already had the big guys looking at him, but he's such a unique player, a guy that's 6'7" and can play point guard. That's rather unusual.
Yeah, there's that's a reason we have him in the top 10. I think that he is if he can really stay at point, and even if he couldn't play the two, he's an NBA, that's like the kind of thing that the modern NBA drools over, make him that position. He handles the ball incredibly well. I think kind of the floor vision and the passing and kind of the facilitation is going to be what determines if he can stay at the one going forward. But if he does, then all of a sudden you're talking about a top 5 kid, I think. It's going to be interesting to see this next year what kind of becomes of him as he adds weight and adds size. I haven't had a chance to talk to him lately, so I know Indiana's involved. I know that he's been relatively high on them, but I have not had a chance to kind of ask him where things stand in the last 6 months or so. So I'll be interested to catch up with him this summer and pitch him.
Well, I'll have to go back in a second and look at that. We thehoosier.com spoke with him last week and talked to him about all of that, so I'll pull that up. But there are other guys that are also on Indiana's radar, and a little crossover between one of them with Mikel Brown, who played against Indiana Elite, I think last week, and Trent Sisley drew the defensive assignment. And Mikel Brown's an outstanding player, and he held him to 4 of 22 from the field.
Yeah, here's the thing with Mikel. I think he, if all things are equal, I think he's going to end up being a 2024 kid. Talking to his dad recently, they want to reclassify up if the college that he picks allows that. I think Alabama has talked to him about that. I don't know where Indiana is on that. But I think the goal for him is to play the summer and then reclass in the 2024 class and then be on campus somewhere. At least according to his dad, that was the plan. I think they were trying to get some academic stuff straightened out. So it's a possibility that if Indiana has a roster spot for him, that they could recruit him that way. And if they don't, they're probably not so involved, provided that he gets the academic stuff straightened out and doesn't stay in 2025.
Yeah, so there's a lot going on. Indiana this year, they have not been – when Mike Whitson came in, they didn't hit the state very much because basically they were just kind of behind. You already had guys that were involved. And so this will be the first class of really going after Indiana players in addition to adding from the portal. They had a great trip, I guess you'd say, through Portalville this offseason. They have filled a ton of spots that that were glaring weaknesses from when you watched last year. They did not have depth at all, and they were very, very weak at the guard spot. You had the injury to Xavier Johnson, but even with that or without that, they were still very thin at the guard, thin at shooting. And so they have added the pieces to fill those in. Luke Goody for the shooting. You've got Ja'Kai Newton, who we have not seen play yet. And we kind of forget about a little bit, but he's behind the curtains as well.
Yeah, that portal class is intriguing to me on a number of levels. I think that Stanford point guard Caden Carlisle is an outstanding player. Obviously, Miles Rice from Washington State. That backcourt there is intriguing because for a number of reasons. Both are talented players, but also they seem to kind of fill in each other's gaps. You know, Rice is a long, kind of rangy guy that can defend multiple positions. He's proven the ability to score at an incredible clip at Washington State in the Pac-12 last year. And I think Carlisle's knack, he can obviously score the ball, but he's a facilitator. He's kind of a true point guard, Atlanta guy, hard-nosed. And I think they kind of play well off each other. It's going to be interesting. I'm really interested to see what it's like if they're both on the court together at the same time there at Indiana. And I think that'll obviously kind of bolster that backcourt.
Yeah, and some of the other guys, Nate Ament is one of them that on Indiana's radar as well.
Yeah, he's a Maryland guy. He's a guy that's really helped his stock this offseason too in the spring. He'll probably be moving in closer to the top 5. Just the length. He's not a polished product yet, I don't think. It's more potential than production with him. There are times where he'll go off for 30 and he can shoot it. But I think there's room for growth there. He handles it pretty well. He's gotten better at handling it. So he's kind of playing that wing spot. It's an ideal for, with the length and the way that he handles the ball. If it all comes together offensively for him, he can defend 5 positions. And he's the kind of guy that NBA GMs are already buzzing about because of the long-term potential, not so much the production.
And then who are some of the other guys that Indiana you think has a great shot with?
I've heard, I was just talking to Chris Senak's coach this morning, actually. He said that they've been talking to Mike Woodson and that they were expecting an offer in the next couple of days from him. So we'll see if they offer him. He's a power forward out of New Orleans, about 220 pounds, can shoot it a little bit, kind of a bully under the glass. So he's where do we have him ranked? In the top 40, I think. I think somewhere 35, 36. So I'd expect to see Indiana get involved with him. He's a 2026. So yeah, I would look for news on that unless the coach is lying to me in the next few days. Or no, he's in 2025, excuse me.
And then what the rest of the summer now, what are you expecting on the scene up until we get to the 3SSB finals in July in Rock Hill, South Carolina, and the EYBL championship, the Peach Game?
Yes, I'm home this weekend for once, thank God. And then, it's been a grind, I tell you what. And then off to Penn All-American Camp, where a lot of those Indiana targets will be there in Las Vegas. Almost all the guys that we just talked about will all be out there. And then I was going to try to do USA basketball for a couple of days, but I don't know if I'm going to be able to make that in Colorado Springs. And then you're into NBA Top 100 camp, and then Peach Jam, and then the 3SSB championships in July. So, hopefully I'll savor this week off at home and then be back out on the road and see a lot of those Indiana commits, or Indiana prospects, I guess, targets in Vegas. I know Mikael Brown is going to be there. I think that Edwards or Braylon's going to be there. I know that Malachi Moreno is going to be there. So it'll be nice to get another look at those guys.
Yeah, speaking of Jalen Harrelson earlier, I mentioned that the Hoosier.com spoke to him last weekend, and he said that he originally said the end of summer in regards to a decision, but I'm really looking at early fall. I want to take my visits, which I can't do right now, but I want to take my visits with some being in early fall and go through the process before I make my decision. And as far as Indiana being involved with him, yes, Mike Woodson was my first offer, and that has always meant a lot to me. They've kept in close contact with me, and obviously had the visit not too long ago. It's been good. So that's from Jalen Harrelson in regards to his decision.
I'd expect Indiana to be on that final list when he cuts it, even if he cuts it down to 4 or whatever. The thing that we need to talk about on a macro level that you kind of pointed out there is these kids, we have them doing too much. There's an event every weekend. He's like, I can't take visits now. Yeah, because there's a camp or an AAU tournament every single weekend until the fall. It's getting to the point where I'm a little bit kind of worried about, what the toll that this takes on the American high school players' bodies. It seems like there's more events every year that these elite kids are expected to attend. And then the weekends they're off, they have to scramble to take campus visits because they have no other time to do it. And it just seems, it seems like it's gotten a little bit out of hand. And maybe that's coming from a place of I'm sick of being on the road every weekend too. So I understand.
I was getting ready to tell you, brother. I'm like, well, I don't know about them, but I can damn sure tell you, I would sure like to take a break.
Yeah, I forgotten my wife's middle name. I'm home so little, and it's even worse for them. I'm going, and I'm not having to work out and play 4 games a day, every weekend on the road, and then come back. And, they just, I know they're kids and they don't fatigue like adults do, but man, it is a lot. There are no weekends off anymore. And there's not even a lull between the high school season and the grassroots season. So when Harrelson says he can't take visits, yeah, it's because he's playing basketball all the time.
Yeah, it's hard to get those scheduled in there with all the travel and all of that. And speaking of what Harrelson said, I've spoken with Braylon Mullins and Malachi Moreno and Trent Sisley as well, and they all said that they're looking at before their seasons making decisions. I don't know if they all stick with that, especially someone like Braylon Mullins, who is going to continue to just stack up offers, but these decisions may all come before Indiana's or anyone else's season starts.
Yeah, I think as far as Mullins goes, the sooner the better for Indiana, right? Like, you want him to make that decision like now before he starts getting around to Kansas and the North Carolinas of the world. So if he's able to do that, I think it bodes well for Indiana, who has been there before anyone. Like that, you want to talk about a good job of identifying talent. Like, say what you want, but they were there and they made him a priority early before anybody else really saw him and before he's become what he's become. And I think that's still worth something, even in today's name, image, and likeness landscape. If all things are equal, I think that's a really, really important thing.
Hello, everybody. Jim Coyle with Indiana Sports Beat Radio, and thank you for enjoying our content and videos. And make sure you hit that subscribe and notifications toggle so you don't miss out on anything, whether it's Indiana Hoosiers, the Boilers, the Colts, the Pacers, Indiana high school action, whatever's happening in sports. We're trying to bring it all to you, and make sure you don't miss out on a thing. Again, hit the subscribe button for us. Helps us out a ton. We appreciate each and every one of you. Thank you so much.